is gone. This is the
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'm gonna roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, Harry, and good morning, listening audience. We're going to be joined by Jerome James, who's called in, and I don't have Jerome here in the studio with me, but thanks to technology and Alexander Graham Bell and other people, we're going to be able to hear his voice and even display his picture for Facebook Live. And in fact, we're going to be talking about technology in terms of Alexander Graham Bell and what's kind of evolved over the last 120 or so years in terms of communication and what we now call the internet. But think about when Alexander Graham Bell and kind of electrodes and wires and just connecting and can you hear me and can you hear me now? Just the acceleration, the exponential acceleration of our communication ability and our expertise, and also some people might say our challenges and our addictions for that matter. But we're going to talk about how education has really impacted education from a communication and technology standpoint has really impacted all of us. And in fact, Jerome James is going to kind of share with us what he's involved with in terms of impact immersive. We'll put that blog link up on the site. But it's really just great to have Jerome join us to talk about impact immersive. And we're going to, we hear so much about new paradigms and economic development and the digital divide and whether people are being left behind. Of course, that's kind of an age-old discussion as well. We're going to also talk about we know that we consume a lot in society, but how to kind of be a creator, and for that matter, even a technology creator. So are we going to continue to remain dependent as just consumers, or can we find some sort of independence from being your own technology creator? Also, economic opportunities in the technology field. We hear about workforce development, and certainly I came up in the elevator today and this morning to the studio, and certainly there are no longer elevator operators, and for that matter, very few bank tellers for that matter. So things do change, and how does technology kind of impact the workforce? We hear also about something called universal basic income. So there's a lot on the table we're going to discuss today in terms of the expanding economic opportunity in the tech sector and how not to be left behind. And then just the kind of the always the metaphorical and reflective question on why technology versus other career paths. And certainly I would suggest that we're going to hear more from Jerome from Impact Immersive, how technology is really defining any career path that we might pursue or even define in the future could be impacted by this universal term of technology. And then lastly, you may recognize the word and the name Jerome James, but he did spend some time in New Haven, and we're going to talk about just how his time in New Haven kind of impacted him. So Jerome, good morning.
Good morning, Tom. How you doing?
Good. Was my introduction reasonably acceptable to you?
Reasonably. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, you can elaborate on it, and you can polish it up a little bit more, and that's why I have you on for the next 43 minutes or so to kind of polish us up and launch us into the new world of technology and life and just how we can thrive.
You can polish. Yeah. No, you were good. You were good. No.
All right.
We just we'll touch on all those areas, and I'm excited about talking to you. You and I go back a long way.
Absolutely.
Since my time in New Haven, and the ventures that you started and that kind of thing, and having a hand in helping you to get some of that done. So yeah, we've got a pretty good history, and I'm thinking that this will be a great conversation.
Great. Well, let's jump right in. Impact immersive. What's that all about?
Okay, so we had my partner Kevin Thompson. He and I have known each other since we were in the 8th grade, actually. We both went into careers related to communications and hitting more on the sales and advertising side, and myself obviously doing more content creation and that kind of thing. And so we come together a few years ago to kind of figure out the ways in which we can, kind of, work together and create a business that was focused on, communications and content creation and that kind of thing. And so a while back, I had been introduced to something called mixed reality.
Mixed reality.
Which is essentially if you took the best of virtual reality, which is immersing yourself in a different environment altogether using a headset, and you mix that with something called augmented reality, which is just something that overlays over your environment. Putting those two things together, they call that mixed reality.
Mixed reality, excellent.
And so I had been at a conference, and I was kind of looking for ways to use technology in different kind of industries. I had just left college athletics, and so for that reason, I was kind of feeling my way around in terms of how you could use tech to impact different areas. And so, although back then I wasn't able to kind of complete project work because we were kind of a little ahead of the curve, we had come back to it about 2 or 3 years ago and figuring out the ways that we could integrate technology into content creation. And so the deeper we got into it, we were thinking about, okay, so not only do we want to be able to be in a position to create content and do those kinds of things, but we also want to look at the ways in which we can impact the next generation. And so we looked at, apprenticeships and internships and that kind of thing, and how we could bring education to the table in order to help those who are underrepresented in technology. And so that kind of led us down another path where we were thinking, okay, so there's all kinds of, opportunities there and things that should be done. And so we ended up just kind of cooling our jets for a minute and really taking a step back and looking at the whole picture and trying to figure out the ways in which we could do everything that needed to get done. Now, I mean, it's a big mountain to climb, and so we knew that we were going to have to bring in other people to be able to do that. And so we kind of landed on the idea of using a collective of people, people who were small business owners and universities and not-for-profit organizations and all those kinds of things, and bringing them all to the table in order to be able to do content creation and do all kinds of things around education and that kind of piece. And so what we landed on was really kind of taking a holistic view of how you change a paradigm in the tech sector. And so, we looked at the ways in which those people who were small business owners or looking to do creation needed funding. Because it's one of the big questions that's out there is you can have all kinds of great ideas, but how are you going to pay for it?
Right.
And so, especially as it relates to underrepresented groups, it really is difficult for them to obtain the kind of cash that they need, the resources they need to be able to get things off the ground. So that was one layer of what we wanted to do, was to be able to help in that area. The second layer was to be able to work with kind of that next generation of content creators and innovators in using the technology. And that kind of, again, we had to be able to figure out the ways that we could build relationships with universities and students and all those kinds of things. And that third tier is the next generation, those who are in middle and high school.
Oh, man,
and
that's
the ways
okay.
in which we could introduce to them technology in a different way.
Right, tremendously.
And be able to say to them, okay, well, here's a possible career path for you that you might not necessarily have thought about.
Tremendous.
And so that's where our alliances with not-for-profits and that kind of thing came into play. And so we looked at all that package and said, okay, well, what's the best thing that we can do besides, our resources and what we have to give as professionals? The whole idea of being able to create a fund. And the fund would pay for all of the things that we just talked about. And so that's where we are right now, is in the middle of laying the groundwork for that fund. We're dealing with our financial advisors and that kind of thing. So we put together that coalition, and so that's what Impact Immersive is.
Boy, that's really strategic and also universal, but also specific at the same time. And you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and as you know, Jerome, on radio, folks kind of come and go. Well, I mean, even on TV or the internet for that matter. So we're talking to Jerome James at Impact Immersive. Give us a few examples of someone's listening, if they want to get involved, if they want to support, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to provide some services, if they want to become a part of your network. What's the best way for them to go about that?
Sure. We've you can go to the website, take a look around, and that kind of thing. I will give out my email address so people can contact me directly. I really like to be hands-on.
Sure. Feel free to share that now, because although I do have a lot of dedicated listeners, we know how the life gets.
Sure.
So we'll repeat your email address a few times, but
so it's just simply Jerome, Jerome, at impactimmersive.com.
Good.
Yeah. So yeah, you can email me directly, and we'd love to have conversations. Where we are right now is because of the fact that we're still kind of in that first phase of putting the fund together. We really focused in on who are we going to work with out the box. How are we justifying the ask that we're making to potential investors and that kind of thing. And so it's been really exciting from our point of view to be able to see the people who are out there. We've got this really diverse kind of group of people that we've brought in and that we'll be working with. I in fact,
let's give a shout out. Let's give a shout out to some of your partners and
Sure. Just before I came on, there were two young ladies who are grads of Harvard Education School. They came up with the idea of being able to help first-generation college students using virtual reality. And so they're doing is essentially immersing a student in a virtual reality environment and allowing them to deal with different scenarios that they'll face as they move through their freshman year.
Tremendous.
And so, that kind of thing has a place to be able to obviously change the dynamic of students who are, kind of fearful of what that experience will be like, and give them kind of that heads up before they actually, have the opportunity to walk into a classroom and do some things. So that kind of project, and we're working with a guy in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he actually moved from Boulder, Colorado, and created a VR academy.
Okay.
And Clarksdale, Mississippi, he told me, is the poorest city in the poorest state in the country.
Yes, it has that reputation.
What he did was he walked in and essentially took 25 students and was able to work them through the academy. And so now they're all VR capable. And have designed a game that's being sold in 16 countries across the world. And so the aim for us and them is to be able to create more of these in those kinds of places that really need it. The emphasis for us is obviously being able to take those people who are in places that you would never think of, and be able to introduce them to technology in a different way.
Well, and that's where
to see the possibilities.
And that's where the new markets are. The audience development.
Exactly.
It's a mining approach. And again, this is the Tom Ficklin Show, and we're talking to Jerome James, and he's going to reference some of his various partners locally, and also I'm assuming you're also maybe in the Caribbean and internationally, but Impact Immersive is what we're chatting about. And you've heard this term, artificial intelligence or virtual reality, or even just the addiction of the social media. But for better or for worse, we're in that environment now, and we use this word technology that applies to so many things. But I wanted to kind of do this show, Jerome, just to share with people that sometimes we have to take the long range view and the strategic view. So it's really exciting to talk to you, because we don't want to. We can imagine when Facebook first started, or when Netscape first started, or when Prodigy first started. This is a chance also for your fun, for us to kind of not be left further behind. So I really appreciate your joining me.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time and definitely the opportunity to talk about what we're trying to do, because obviously, we believe it's important to. You talked in the beginning about the digital divide and those kinds of things, and so that gap is just going to become greater and greater if we're not stepping into it. And that doesn't mean that we're alone, because obviously there are a number of other programs that are out there, Black Girls Who Code, a number of really well done programs that are attempting to, kind of do the same thing that we're doing. They're just kind of doing it on the base level in terms of the teaching and that kind of thing. But the effort that's taking place is something that is really going to have to involve everybody from grandma down through students and that kind of thing. And we're figuring out those ways to be able to involve everybody. The idea that if we can get the students to come in and to really understand technology in a new way and to forge a career path, the parent and the guardians and whomever else in their community are going to benefit in a number of different ways. Being able to see their children prosper in certain ways and to have more confidence about what they can do as a future and that kind of thing. But we also are building in ways in which they can participate as well, because when you think of a fund, you think along the lines of larger sums of money being given and that kind of thing, and obviously that's where we want to be. But in addition to that, we really want to emphasize the idea that if you've got $40 or $50 that you want to invest in the fund, that we'll be able to give you the opportunity to do that. So then you become a partner and become empowered in different ways that you might in the past. So it becomes an investment for you. Your return on investment obviously won't be as large as somebody else, but by the same token, you're still in that investment game.
Absolutely.
And still understanding how it works. And so, as that generation and the people that we're working with now begin to build businesses and they become successful in communities, now we're talking about economic development within those communities.
Indeed.
And how everybody gets impacted in different ways. But if we can, kind of plant the seeds early with that generation and then help everybody else to understand there are always ways that you can participate, that really becomes the mission for us in the long run, is to be able to change the way people think about not only technology, but investment and everything else that's kind of involved with what we're trying to do right now.
Indeed. Jerome, not to put you on the spot, but let's brainstorm for just 1 second. 12 months from now, when we have you back on the show, that's an indirect and sly way of letting you know that you will be returning. What do you hope we'll be talking about? What kind of examples might you be able to provide us with?
Yeah, what I hope we're talking about at that point is the fact that we've got another 15 centers up in various parts of the country and in the world. One of the people that I didn't mention was a young lady who's based in India, and she is starting an augmented reality business from scratch. And we've been able to kind of talk to her about what her dreams and visions are and that kind of thing. And so her business being able to be in a position where she's hired more people and really has gotten really good traction in terms of what she's doing. That the projects that we're working with on the ground level now are at the place where we're either looking to break them out as their own separate businesses that will then kind of plant the seed for whatever is next, and then in addition to that, being able to say that we're looking at a fund that has grown to the point where we can talk about 8-9 figures and that kind of thing, because the reality is we can think about the idea of investing a few $100,000 and that kind of thing, but really you need real money to be able to complete the things that we're trying to do.
On that note, who's competing with you in terms of we hear that Google and Amazon, that they've just and Facebook for that matter have just always there'll be a startup or a new niche product, and then they'll just buy them out and kind of be an octopus and kind of consume them. Who's competing with you, do you think, now, and who might want to even try to make you an offer to buy you out in the future?
Well, the two that you mentioned are always kind of lurking in the background. There are other venture capital firms and that kind of thing that might be interested in the idea that we're doing something that they don't necessarily do. I mean, there's I've run into there's groups of black women who have started their own VC funds and that kind of thing, and so we've got people who are on the same page that way. But in terms of how we're looking at it, from the beginning to the end. We're trying to make that a unique kind of niche that we're carving out for
Good.
ourselves. And so, once that growth happens, we'll be able to, really start to impact the industry, and that's where, those larger companies will take a look at what we're doing and might be interested in kind of buying us out or working with us in another way,
Sure.
or bringing us in-house or whatever the case might be. So
And that's why I love.
we'll be looking at those options.
And that's why I love your name, the Impact Immersive, because although you're in not necessarily the embryonic stage, but again, you're a relatively new startup, and I guess like the name, the Impact Immersive kind of talks about your not grand ambitions, but really realistic ambitions, and your strategic ambitions, and your ambitions that can really affect all people. So this is outstanding. Again, if people can reach out to you, how again?
Yeah, again, it's Jerome, Jerome, at impactimmersive.com.
Okay. And so 24 months out, that was an excellent answer in terms of 12 months. 24 months out, I guess I think you can get the drift, Jerome. I'm trying to use the show to
Sure.
just inspire people about what your visions might be, what your dreams might be when you woke up this morning. What do you want to do? Don't be depressed. Just kind of plan, at least in your mind. But the plan in your mind, you also have to connect and relate to folks. So 24 months out, give us a possible scenario.
Yeah, 24 months out, we've got 5, 6 really well done businesses that are moving and shaking the industry in certain ways. We've got another 15 academies up and moving across the country and around the world. We are in other countries around the world. In particular, the Latin American world and Africa. One of the statistics that always jumps out at me is that Africa is the youngest continent in the world.
From a demographic standpoint, in terms of the population,
exactly.
yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's plenty of fertile ground there to be able to kind of do what we're doing. If we can do that in inner city USA, we can certainly take that same model and replicate it in parts of Africa with the right partners and that kind of thing. And so we've spread out to be international at that point. We're fully immersed in being able to work in all of the emerging technologies. And, you mentioned earlier artificial intelligence, which has a relationship to augmented and virtual reality,
Yes.
but it also has a relationship to the Internet of Things.
Yes.
And for those of you who aren't, kind of familiar with the Internet of Things, think about Alexa, think about your Fitbit
Yes.
as a form of the Internet of Things where, you're connected to the Internet through a device and that kind of thing. And so those kinds of tools will become much more prevalent as we're moving forward.
Absolutely.
You talked about communications. One of the other projects that we're working through now and is with the University of Florida. There was a professor there who started a VR for Good class, and he
virtual reality for good.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And his initial was to take a look at how virtual reality could be used in different ways to be able to, kind of help society overall and that kind of thing. He's now turned his focus to using it solely to doing storytelling with his students. And what that did for us was that, we had already established a relationship with them, but, kind of came right into, our sweet spot in terms of working in communications and all. But the future of how we communicate, the things that get done will involve that kind of technology.
That's right.
So doing storytelling in virtual reality, doing storytelling in augmented reality, and some of the things that, we're looking at in terms of that is being able to really unleash, history. So, let's talk about New Haven and being able to walk down Orange Street and point your device at a building and then have Mayor Daniels come out and talk to you about his time as mayor.
Indeed.
And the kinds of things that, that kind of brings to the table is being able to do those kinds of things as well. How storytelling will differ, even getting your news in the morning, through Alexa and places like that will then become another open space for people to take advantage of. You see podcasting now as something that is taken off, but certainly that kind of broadcasting will be done through those smart speakers and that kind of thing as well. And all of that is encased in this particular project that we're doing with the University of Florida, because we're not only going to be working with them, we're working with several other universities, including Southwest Indian Polytechnic Institute, which they're doing this incredible job
in New Delhi. I mean, where are they located?
They're in New Mexico, actually.
Oh, New Mexico, okay.
And they work with Native American students,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got a professor who's been doing this for about 20 years or so, who has introduced them to emerging technologies and the ways in which they're going to be able to use them, and he's brought in relationships with NASA and other people like that, and so our work with him would be able to expand that and include storytelling, traditional Native American storytelling that can be unleashed like that, can be done in other ways, and so it really gives us the opportunity to bring in everybody.
Boy, I love that.
We could talk about black and brown folks, and we could talk about Native Americans, and but in addition to that, we also look at Appalachia and
Mm-hmm.
places like that where you've got poverty and those who might not necessarily be exposed to those kinds of things in the same way, and being able to introduce it to them as well. So we're excited about that project for that reason, because it brings us to a lot of different places around the country and allows us to really look at how storytelling will evolve over the next 20, 30 years.
Sure,
and the ways in which people in those underrepresented groups can actually have an impact on how that happens.
That's right, and a immersive impact as well. And again, as you referenced the mother continent and native and the original people here in America and India, and that's why I was so excited about the show, because I've talked a lot this is my next month, August will be my third year on the station, and I've really enjoyed every program I've done. I've really enjoyed, but sometimes I haven't really stepped back and took the long term approach and talked about what the future might not that we're prophets or we can see into the future, but you can certainly plan and anticipate and strategize and to replicate scenarios, and the business that you're in is really in terms of the future seeking and dream making, but manifesting some dreams. I'm curious, and I don't want you to give all of your trade secrets away, but from a business standpoint, Jerome, you've referenced kind of some of the connections you've made. What's been the kind of, if you were to talk to a business person, what's enabled you to make the connection with the University of Florida, with the lady in India, with the Harvard students? I mean, just in terms of your presence, your communication with various people, your network. I guess want to share a few tidbits of someone's looking to kind of engage in their startup or to manifest their dream or to make that relationship. We hear about networking and relationships being so important, but you've dropped some really nice examples to people about how, if you want to grow, how you need to connect. And I was just curious if you had any words of wisdom to share in that regard.
Yeah, it's not real wisdom. It's the grind. It really is. Going out and I read. One of the things that really, and kind of talking about a little bit about the foundation that New Haven gave me.
Okay.
It was my second reporting job at the New Haven Register when I first arrived in New Haven.
Okay.
But before that, I had always read newspapers. My parents introduced me very early on to being aware of the world around you and all those kinds of things. And so as a result, I just read all the time. And so when I really started to dive into certain areas and looking at the tech world and all that kind of thing, every time somebody hits me, I just reach out to them.
So if you get a message, if you get a message on Facebook, if you get a message,
fine. But for those who do, then that gives us the opportunity to have that conversation and to build the network that way.
So
it's also being in the room with people.
Okay.
One of the things that I learned, working with Mayor Daniels and when he was not only the state senator but the mayor as well, is when you're in the room, always be aware of who's around you and the ways in which you can interact with them. And so it really is about being able to be interested in what people are doing and saying, and from there being able to say, okay, well, that fits certainly with what I'm trying to do. But even if it doesn't, being able to say to them, okay, well, maybe there's somebody else that I can hook you into.
Good, good,
that
good.
can help you do what you're doing.
Good.
And then that comes back around because then they'll think of you when something, that you're doing kind of floats their way. And so, it really is about, being able to take all the opportunities to meet people and to meet them where they are, essentially.
Yes.
And the ways in which we can do that. And, my partner is just as good as I am with that kind of thing as
All
well.
right.
Because he's that sales advertising guy.
All right, let's give a shout out to his. Let's give a shout out to his name. What's his name? Let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, Kevin Thompson.
So Kevin Thompson.
He's based down in Atlanta. Yeah. So, from that perspective, it really is about just being able to constantly be focused on what you're doing, not in an unhealthy way where it's everything and that you're doing, but by the same token, really being able to understand the ways in which you can bring people to the table, and even if again they're not helping you immediately, at some point down the line they might, and the best thing is that if you're helping other people, that's all part of this as well. Our mission and goal obviously is to be able to help people to achieve their goals and dreams and that kind of thing along the way. But certainly it doesn't necessarily have to be in the space that we're in. That we're
very good point. I like that.
To help whomever it is that we can.
I like that. So you're open to the intersectionality, as they say, and again,
exactly.
You're listening to the
Right.
Tom Ficklin Show, and Jerome James is with us on Impact Immersive, and just you go to Impact Immersive. We'll have the link up on the various sites. I also heard you say, I think, Jerome, that if you get a LinkedIn, if someone hits you up on LinkedIn or Facebook or et cetera, that you'll quickly respond. And I know that sometimes that's time consuming, but I think that's important for people to know that you do have to invest the time in others as well.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly, I do have LinkedIn and I am on Facebook. My Facebook is just a, kind of public page that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the business. But certainly if somebody contacts me through that, I'd be more than happy to, have a discussion with them and talk about what we're doing and, maybe the ways that we can help them to do what they're doing or whatever the case might be. But certainly I'm open to that as well.
Tremendous. We have another 8 or 10 minutes or so. Jerome, talk a little bit, just to take the step back. Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Jerome James is with us from Impact Immersive. When you mentioned the fund, are you at the stage of maybe issuing a prospectus, or how is it managed, or what's kind of the financial liability or financial structure involved if someone wants to invest?
Sure. Yeah, we are right now in the middle of working with our financial advisors on getting out, the prospectus and that kind of thing. That's what I was mentioning a little earlier. We had to go back and get our numbers from the people that we're dealing with to know exactly what their needs are going to be and the ways in which, we can kind of, get those fulfilled. But then being able to say beyond that, okay, so let's take a look at what else could essentially occur over the course of the next year. How much money do we realistically need? And our financial advisors have been really good about helping us to understand. Don't just ask for that, what you need specifically, and going beyond that. But also, before you were mentioning about the dreaming part, and saying, okay, well, is it unrealistic, to be able to say that, to be able to say that, we're looking at, $10 million to be able to, kind of get off the ground and do everything that we want to do. When you talk about traditional VCs, they talk about, the hundreds of millions of dollars and those type of figures. And so, the reality, though, is that if you're going to expand and you're going to make the kind of changes that we hope, we can impact as we're moving through and bringing, inclusion and real diversity to the table, that it's going to take that kind of money to be able to do that. And it's not about the greed part of it and kind of, being greedy about what you're trying to pull in for yourself. It's the idea that the more resources that you have, the more you can give out and the more you can, really have that impact across the board. And so, when we're dreaming, we're definitely dreaming big about those kinds of numbers for that particular reason.
Excellent. But tease people a little bit with you were here. Where were you born?
Actually, it's funny. I was actually born in White Plains, New York.
White Plains, New York.
So yeah, I was not too far from New Haven. In fact, I was born and well, I guess we were born in the same hospital. I'm pretty sure that we were. Paul Bass.
Okay.
He and I are from the same hometown.
All right.
And in fact, we worked for the same Gannett chain when we were both in high school.
Cut it out.
And yeah, and obviously, Paul is big in New Haven and that kind of thing.
The reason I have
yeah.
the reason I have the pleasure of talking to you now is because of his foresight and his innovation in terms of competing for the license for the low power station license. Obviously
Right.
establishing the New Haven Independent. But this will be 3 years next month for the radio aspect of it. Absolutely.
Right.
So walk us through how did you get to New Haven?
Yeah. All right. So I went
Hartford.
to school, finished up at the University of Buffalo,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a thing where I had a professor who really liked me and really thought that I had the kind of necessary tools to be able to be successful in journalism, and he just happened to be fielding a phone call on an internship for another student, and that particular editor said to him, well, we have a position here. Do you have anybody that you can recommend? And so he recommended me. I ended up in Bristol, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first newspaper job. I was there for a year, and then jumped over to the Register after a year because one of the editors there came from the Bristol paper, and so there was a little bit of a pipeline kind of going.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I ended up in New Haven, was just through the idea that, using the connections
Yes.
and the networking that other people had. So
And then
so,
how about the municipal jump to or working with us at that time, State Senator John?
yeah, that that was an interesting jump because my whole life not my whole life, but probably since I was in high school, the only thought that I had was being a journalist and kind of moving up through the ranks and eventually maybe owning my own place and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was living on State Street at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and Khalid Lum,
Oh, yes.
who I'd been in contact with, who was a writer at that point, and so he and I had become friends, and he was beginning to kind of work with the campaign, and so that's when I met
With
Steve
Daniels
White.
Daniels for Mayor, the Daniels for Mayor campaign.
Exactly
Mhm.
right. And so Steve and Khalid were in my neighborhood. There was a Chinese restaurant not too far from where I lived, and I just was walking down the street and I saw Khalid, and we started to talk. He introduced me to Steve. We had a brief conversation, connected right away, and a few weeks later we were talking about the possibility of me coming on board to help in whatever ways I could.
Yes.
And so that really is how it started, and the strategic kind of planning that Steve did, and he and Lisa Sullivan
Yes.
don't get, I think, the real credit that they needed because they really were the driving force in a lot of ways behind that campaign.
Yes.
We were really young. I'm thinking back to the idea that none of us, with the exception of Khalid, were over 30.
Mhm.
All of us were in our 20s, and for the most part, none of us had held a position that that we had at that particular point. Steve had been working in campaigns and that kind of thing before that, but had never really helmed
Yes.
a campaign in that particular way.
I'm blocking Steve's last name. I can see his parents. He was in the D.C. area. What's Steve's last name again?
Steve White.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
yeah.
Steve White. Yeah, good.
Right,
Just
right.
want to get that in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that experience was incredible because you don't know it until you look back on it.
Yes.
But the team that we had at that point, the idea that all of us, and you had really smart people. I mean, we're talking, most of the staff having, Yale degrees. And,
Yes.
that whole thing. But the idea that all of us could kind of, submit our egos to the point where we weren't trying to step over each other.
Yes.
But we were trying to stay in our lanes as much as possible, and function in the ways that we needed to in order to help each other do what we were doing.
And just hold that point, Jerome.
Sure,
Jerome, because
sure.
I think hopefully people can see that the relationship experiences that you developed and the skill set and the mentality 20, 30 years ago, and how now you've transported that, transferred that, used that in terms of now your current model of reaching out, of helping, how sometimes our early life experiences can really condition us in a positive way as we grow older and live and prolong. And the last point I want to mention, then I want you to kind of continue, is that I'm so glad you mentioned Khalid's name and Lisa, because they're no longer here on this particular planet Earth, and so every moment is so incredibly important, and it's a blessing, and so we must maximize the present. So I just wanted to kind of, I'm so glad you mentioned Khalid and Lisa's name, but continue.
Well, yeah, without a doubt, because they were the two really special people that you didn't realize it when you're in the moment. You're working through and you're doing your thing, and I knew how talented Khalid was when we would sit in speech sessions with the mayor, and we were doing prep for speeches and that kind of thing, and Khalid would take off on these kind of flowery kind of things where he was throwing all kinds of things at him, and but what happened was he was able to really do a mind meld essentially with Mayor Daniels.
Yes.
The idea that the words that he was speaking were Khalid's, but they were words that were familiar to Mayor Daniels. And there's an artistry that goes there that people don't appreciate.
That's right.
President Obama and his writing team had that same kind of relationship, but there's something about that that most people don't get because it's so routine. They just see a politician
it's a business,
and start to talk, and that's it. But the things that go beyond that and go into that are really special. And Lisa strategically, being able to bring together that coalition of people and working with Alma Ayala, who was another person that was integral in being able to do that kind of thing as well. All those things coming together in this group was pretty incredible, and it is something that I'll always remember. I remember I was thinking about this the other day. I remember the night that Mayor Daniels was elected. We had to come. We were coming through the ballroom, and we were coming through like this back entrance to get up to the stage. And I was with him. I had a speech, and we were walking up, and we walked onto the stage. And I will never forget this for as long as I live. I looked out, and it was just a sea of people in the ballroom. And people were clapping. Some people were screaming for what seemed like no apparent reason. It was just, but when you looked out, there were black faces, there were brown faces, there were white faces. This coalition that was put together, was really unique. And so, those kinds of experiences really laid the foundation again for the things that I think about now.
And what you're doing, now, what you're planning,
I'm sorry.
And what you are doing now, and what you're planning. I mean, you're weaving together. You're taking that experience of knowing how the politics and the economics and the education and just the social mores kind of all intersect, and how can we move forward in the future. And so, John is looking down on you favorably. Khalid is looking down on you favorably. Lisa's looking down on you favorably. We got about one more minute. I want to give you the closing word. Again, this is the Tom Ficklin Show, and we've been listening to Jerome James from Impact Immersive, and we're going to hear more from Jerome. He's already agreed on the public sphere to kind of come back in 12 months or so for us to chat more. And I really appreciate your sharing that the New Haven impact and your story, because again, hopefully people saw that regardless of what your product or purpose or passion is moving forward, these interactions, the communing with people, the knowing people, the working together, the having projects that you're kind of all collaborating on, that just helps build you as a person. But so Jerome, any kind of in the last 30 or 40 seconds, any closing words or remarks you'd like to give?
Yeah, sure. Just again, thank you very much for this opportunity. We really want to be able to, impact lives. We really want to be able to have people understand that there is a better way, that technology, although you might not necessarily understand it, is going to be something that's in your life forever.
Yes.
And so as a result, you need to understand that beyond being a consumer, but more importantly, making sure that next generation really has a real understanding of how it can drive their lives.
Yes.
And put them in a different position, in a better position to be able to succeed and to grow communities and to impact everybody around them.
Yes. Yes.
In another way, because that's really the key. My parents passed that on to me, to be able to impact the community, and that's the legacy that you really want to leave, is to be able to say that, not only was I blessed enough to do what I'm doing, but more importantly, others were given the opportunity to live dreams that they had, or dreams that they didn't even realize that they had.
Indeed, indeed.
And that's the real important thing.
Indeed, indeed. Tremendous. Jerome, thank you so much. Look forward to chatting with you again. We'll certainly be in touch. This link will be up for you to share with people. And, I hope to kind of lay eyes on you, as the old folks would say at some point.
I hope so, too. I definitely want to get up that way. I haven't been there in a minute, but I definitely want to.
Well, yeah, I can try to reciprocate.
We'll be able to establish a program up there as well. So
there you go.
So
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen
we'll
to that. Amen to that.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Jerome, thank you so much, man. Talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care.
And we'll chat with you next Monday. And again, you listen to the Tom Ficklin Show. Harry, thank you. Paul Bass, thank you. And we go down memory lane, but also there's memories to make. So make your memories today for people to understand and appreciate, and really remember your legacy.
Better watch the way you're going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gonna be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. I'm never gonna give up.